It feels like for every possible question that can be posed tactically, this Arsenal team has an answer. We are so assured, so dominant in any and every game state. Before the match, Vincent Kompany called Mikel Arteta's team the benchmark, in his words, for so many different phases of play. The game, Arsenal against Bayern Munich, was set up to be a tactical goldmine, and boy, it did not disappoint. So, how did Arsenal overpower Vincent Kompany's seemingly unstoppable force and stake their claim for being Europe's premier side? Welcome back to the Harvey Gratian YouTube channel. I'm so glad you found us or are joining us once again. And today's video is going to unpack the match, moving through 3 different segments. I'm going to begin with a first half full of absurd quality, yes, but specifically for Arsenal, why it was about getting to grips with Bayern's brilliance. Secondly, how Arsenal set up the platform for their runaway second half, asking questions of this Bayern Munich team they haven't been asked before. And lastly, how Arsenal took control of the second half, including Rice's pendulum role, why it was about outlasting Bayern more than anything else, and so much more. It may not have been a game with qualification riding on it, but this felt more than just a statement for Arsenal. This was a what more do you need to see to the rest of Europe? Let's get into the analysis. As Declan Rice said in his post-match interview, there are so many movements to contend with when facing Kompany's men. Loosely, they look to build around this kind of base of 4. Arsenal fans, this may seem familiar, with Kimmich and Pavlovic roaming around the 2 centre-backs to create these different angles, and on top of them, Bayern never stop swirling. Again, you'll see similarities in how Bayern Munich are able to, and happy to, vacate the centre-forward zone with Kane roaming and the focus on counter movements to stretch in behind, looking to isolate our defenders when we follow their deeper movements, and to swarm the centre and especially the right-hand side in the final third. They've developed, Bayern Munich, a kind of intuitive sense of where the space is. As we saw for their initial equaliser, it was one of the fairly rare times that they caught Arsenal out. Saliba is thinking about Kane, and Mosquera is just kept inside enough by Kral. You can see the balance Bayern look to create with their runs, as well as the undoubted quality. But this was one of, as I said, the rare times Arsenal were caught out. And here, you'll have to forgive me with how nerdy I'm about to be for our dominance off the ball, because the game Bayern wanted us to play at times in the first half is a game when we are talking about Arsenal having answers for every tactical possibility. It is a game that Arsenal are more than okay to play at times. Before we look at Arsenal's high press, I want to start with a passage showcasing the intelligence in our decisions, the communication, the intensity of Arsenal's settled block to still manage to apply pressure on the ball, even when defending deep. Bayern here form their base, and as Mosquera follows to join Saliba on the same line with Kral and Kane in the pockets, that's the cue for Stanisic to stretch. But Mosquera clocks where the bigger threat is, and he stops. But now other problems potentially emerge, and we don't look quite as compact as we did so at the beginning. Rice now is tracking Kimmich. Zubimendi, who started on Kane, sees Gnabry stealing in and transfers his markers, with Eze also realising that Kral is on his blind side. Kimmich has seen it all and now whips it into Kane, but the only reason Zubimendi has changed markers in the first place is because there is a complete trust throughout this Arsenal team that the man behind them is just as aware and cottoned on. Just when it looks like Bayern have Kane turning and spinning in the centre, Saliba dashes in front. And Arsenal needed this level of off-ball quality because throughout the game, Arsenal's pressing became their primary playmaker. How often have I said that before? In the Premier League, the press is often taken out of the equation with long balls. But Bayern want to build differently, and from goal kicks Arsenal went all out man to man. Normally it's Rice that stepped onto Kimmich, but look how seamlessly Arsenal transfer their markers. Eze now sits deep on Kimmich and we match up elsewhere, but this means it's now Trossard to bite onto Upamecano, and he gets his angles spot on to shadow him out the game as he presses Neuer. Rice and Saliba follow Kral and Kane low, forcing Neuer to go long where Timber wins the aerial. Look at Saka Saka defending Laimer in the back line here too. There are no half measures for this Arsenal team anymore, and it's this conviction that sees Saliba jump onto Kane, who could whip Kral's bounce pass into Gnabry, who Saliba has had to leave off his shoulder. And here, the playmaking again is the press, and how across the game Arsenal used the ball in these high regain, high turnover moments so quickly, with their wingers often furthest forward, clustering centrally to spur attacks on towards the goal. Eze and Merino found themselves a little lower for these combinations and quick releases, and it's almost Arsenal 2, Bayern 0. I could go on, but this was the Arsenal platform for a game which allowed them to challenge Bayern, like I said, in a way they haven't necessarily been before. Where did the corner for Arsenal's opener come from? It starts from Arsenal launching a goal kick with Timber ghosting high and Merino creating favourable matchups in the air to flick him on. The loose ball breaks for Bayern Munich and we fly into a counter-press, and Zubimendi forces Laimer out of play. This is Arsenal playing the margins game. And you can't blame Bayern for this disrupting them, because we are so good at so many of these different margins. That could be a quick restart from Rice to Merino, who, as he did the whole game, is looking to release Arsenal's wingers, who are deliberately positioned highest and widest, and a corner comes from this. Everything on and off ball becomes interlinked in a game of football to this level, and in the first half, as I said, this allowed Arsenal enough of a chance as well to say we are just as fluid on the ball when we want to be. And I'd say that we had much more success, especially in that first half and throughout the game, playing through the Bayern Munich man-to-man press. Zubimendi probably spent the most time he has in an Arsenal game so far in between the centre-backs, with Tah following Merino here into these deeper right centre-mid zones, and that's why I think it was good that Merino looked to release so quickly from these spots, because as we know, he's been caught out here dwelling on the ball for too long before. Pavlovic has to sprint across to match up with Rice. Zubimendi is making our decisions of when to speed up play. He turns down Eze's drop, and instead, as Merino pulls Tah across, look at the Bayern centre-backs, by the way, where they are. That Declan Rice pendulum starts to crank, moving from high to low as we know he likes to do to separate himself from Pavlovic, knocking it on first time to Saka, who is impossible to budge off the ball, and seeing this more in these kind of false 90 zones I think is a really nice look to develop for Arsenal. And we've got control of the ball now. Zubimendi hits a quick switch, he joins in again when Noni moves it back to him and immediately clips in Timber, who's been high and wide this whole time, and watching it live, I thought Noni was going to direct Timber's volley cross home. But look at the tempo on show in this passage. Again, I could go on, but let's move on to the second half now, which was a building off the first 45 for Arsenal. But how did they begin to dominate the ball? How did they outlast this Bayern Munich team? There was a slightly tweaked press for sure, with Merino sat on Kimmich to try and mark out the linchpin of Bayern's possession, and that certainly had its effect, with Saka still following Laimer everywhere and Madueke and Eze left to squeeze onto the centre-backs. But we've covered Arsenal off the ball, and it was on the ball that we really started to purr. Once again, we can see how intentional everything is. Merino isn't just dropping for those quick swivels and releases, but to open up lanes. Eze is doing the exact same, and Raya hits a simply ridiculous daisy cutter to Saka, who, with this kind of direct access, can pin, as he does with Laimer. He can attract, as he does with Eze's marker Upamecano, and draw in others, as he does with Eze floating up, and Madueke, as we know, is high on the other side, ready to go. And someone tell me why it's Olise marking him? It's not often this Bayern man-to-man press gets them into bother like this. It became our turn as well now to have longer spells and bouts of possession, and spells of possession without our own recognised centre-forward, with Merino spilling wide, allowing our players to arrive, as we've seen in recent weeks, without gyokeres into these centre-forward spaces, whether that's a Saka diagonal dart or Eze flowing through, like he did against Spurs. Again, it's clear how well matched quality-wise and intention-wise from a tactical point of view this tie was. These are the kinds of shapes that we love to pull backlines into as well, with Eze dropping in the 6, with Zubimendi splitting, our wingers threatening on the diagonal, and lots of bodies between the lines. And we're okay, as I've said so many times this season, being forced back, because that's often a better way to exploit this kind of space, and it allows me to talk about that pendulum role for Declan Rice, which is what a lot of the time he tries to do when he drops and spills into those left back, left centre back roles, but often doesn't have the space to do this. Rice, who began in left back, goes stampeding, and I think Noni's link play, back to goal play, is one of the happy surprises for me about his performances in an Arsenal shirt so far. And as Rice charges on, he just gets a kind of second wind, it seems, when the clock hits 60 minutes. It's a Neuer save and a bit of bad luck on Saka's part, I think, that it's not 2-1 to Arsenal. But this is where Declan Rice took over the match. We see the tweaked press here and how aware Rice is with Bayern's rotations, anticipating and then breezing away from Stanisic. And this is what you can expect an Arsenal left-hand side with an Eberechi Eze to look like, able to play his way inside with a Calafiori who he can slip in on the underlap here. And here's what I said about Calafiori just last video. Number 4, Calafiori's striking on the ball when on the move really has to improve. If that does, we are speaking about a complete attacking threat. It's Ricky with the cross, and it's Madueke who has come back from injury like a man possessed with his first Arsenal goal. And it was here that I really just had to take a step back, and I think we all should take a step back to appreciate how far we've come as a team, because there's been a curse against Bayern Munich, how they've had our number for so many years in European games, but we felt like a real European heavyweight in this moment, the way we now turned the screw. Of course, that was led by Declan Rice, reading second balls, carrying through those gaps on the left-hand side I've been calling out for more, and snapping into a tackle onto Kane, all within the span of 15 seconds. The game had been marginal now, it's fair to say, but we had the legs literally to dominate from now on. And this is Martinelli helping out his full-back partner Calafiori in the back line, helping swarm out Olise, combining with Merino, and then becoming our third man to latch onto and, importantly, give Eze the chance to run our transitions more. And you wondered why I didn't want to sell Martinelli this summer. It's because I wanted to sign another forward who can upgrade us, which means at the very least Martinelli becomes the finisher off the bench we've so sorely lacked, with loads and an abundance of fresh legs. With our squad especially, you don't sell this kind of pace and that kind of hunger that Martinelli has when he's full of confidence, unless it's for a big price. And from the point of winning the ball back on the edge of our box to Gabby hitting the net, it takes 11 seconds only. It really is in every single phase of play that we excel in now. And yet, I understand that it's about being in this exact same position come May. I get that completely, but we have to be able to enjoy moments like these, because we are the benchmark now, and I can't believe I'm saying that. And of course, we need trophies to back it up. I'm not ignorant of that fact, and I think pacing ourselves across the season is going to be a really important step in Mikel's development as a manager. But we are watching an Arsenal team who before have had our kryptonites, it's fair to say, but now we are a kind of chameleon football team who will be the kryptonites for so many. I really hope you've enjoyed this tactical analysis. Like, comment, hype, subscribe, do whatever down below. Thank you so much though. I really hope you've enjoyed. I will catch you very shortly. See you later.